Welcome back to this video tutorial series on how to implement a basic quest in Divinity Original Sin 2's editor. The last video we had demonstrated how to implement a quest journal and how to work that into the conversation of an NPC to grant the quest. However, when we were finished, we noticed that the conversation did not reflect any progression. So whenever you talk to the NPC, you would get the same dialogue every single time. Even after you got the quest, he would just keep on asking the same question. So that doesn't look very good. So we want to revisit that dialogue, and we're going to polish it up a little bit so that we can be more aware of the state that we're in. And while we're at it, we're going to add a little bit more flavor to this quest, and we're going to have the NPC Sven give the character some kind of weapon in order to go about their task. And we'll show how we can do that with the story scripting combined with our dialogue. So we're going to open up our old dialogue. NPC Sven default. And what we're going to do is we're going to add a couple of new flags in order to keep track whether or not we have met Sven before. So we're going to revisit this node over here, and we're going to create a new flag to set. It's going to be a character flag. And because we haven't used it anywhere yet, we're going to have to create it. So we will do something like NPC Sven has met, and we'll add that. We will want to set this on the group players when they talk to Sven. And the other thing we're going to want to do on this node is we're also going to want to check it on the input node, because we're only going to want this to display when this flag is not set. So we'll go over here to character, NPC Sven has met, we'll add that, and this time we won't check it, because what we're telling this node is we're saying if this flag is not set, then you are allowed to appear. Now what we'll do is we'll add a couple of other greetings for the other cases. Actually, before we move on, let's do this. As conversations get bigger, you can start to forget what these boxes are, and instead of having to read the text, what you could do is in the logical name, you could do something like has not met. Put that for a description, so that as you're looking at these nodes, you can get some nice summary of what the logical condition is of when it fires. So now we're going to add another greeting here. And for this greeting, we will say something like has met and quest not accepted. We'll add some text. So in this case, we've met Sven, but we were too busy eating cheese before. If we talk to him again, he'll ask us whether or not we have the time to help yet. So he'll make his continued plea to us in order to help. So for the flags here, character, we want both of these. In this case, we have met Sven, but we have not accepted the quest yet. Remember, this flag gets set over here when the player accepts the quest. This is the flag that we used in order to trigger the journal entry, so we can reuse that over here. If we haven't gotten the journal entry, we haven't offered, or we haven't agreed to help him yet, therefore we can use this flag on this node where Sven will continue to ask whether or not we can help. Now, instead of rewriting the same replies that we had before, we can just link this node to these original ones. The player can now decide whether or not, yes, they're going to help this time, or no, they're still busy. And we can add one more node. And in this one, this will be the case where the player has agreed to help, but isn't finished yet. So we can do something like, have you found a generator yet? We'll change our logical node to has met, quest accepted. And we'll want to add those flags here. So the logical condition for this will be we have met Sven, And we have accepted the quest. For this, we'll want to create another I want to create a reply, and the players will say something like, "Sorry, still looking." And that will be an end node. And this should be enough to improve our conversation so that we get some relevant greetings from Sven depending upon where we are in the quest. So let's save this. Now I'm going to reload our level and story just because I can't remember everything I had done before. I just want to make sure we have a good clean slate to work from. Grab our character. Give ourselves a little more space to see. We come and talk to him. Let's reject it at first. Now if we talk to him, do you have time to help us yet? We really need you. So now we see the case where we've met him, and he's asking us whether or not we've reconsidered whether we can help. We still get the same responses as we had before. If we keep saying no, he'll keep asking us, and then finally we say, okay, sure, we can help you. Now we get the quest. Now if we talk to him again, have you found the generator yet? And that's what we have until we come up with some more states to advance the quest. Now, since our dialogue is growing in complexity, there are a couple of other things that might be useful to talk about. For instance, you might wonder why we have to have the not has met over here. For instance, you might just think, well, isn't just checking for the has met flag over here good enough? And if it's not set, you don't have to put it here. Well, that's not actually the case. If you didn't check this flag at all, in other words, if we just deleted that, thinking that if the NPC Sven has met flag is set, then these will get chosen first. That's not the case. It will just, if you don't put that flag there at all, then it's going to be treated as a don't care term on this node, and so it will have a chance of firing. Because if you end up with a logical condition where more than one of your speaker nodes satisfies the conditions, then the game will actually randomly choose between the nodes. And we can demonstrate that here. And that can be both a detriment as well as helpful in certain cases. So for instance, let's add another greeting. Maybe you want to have two different things that he says when he's waiting for the quest. Maybe you want to do something like, you could add another one that says, time is ticking. We really need that generator. Are you close? And we'll do what we did before with adding the nodes. We'll have the same reply. And so now we have two nodes where we've met Sven and we've accepted the quest. So which one is going to get chosen? Well, as we said, the game will just pick one. So now if I come to talk to Sven, actually, this brings up a good point. So now that we're starting to get into dialogues with flags and whatnot, you're going to want to reload the level and story after you change your dialogue, because that's going to clear all the flag states on the character. Otherwise, if you just continue, the flags will already be set. We're going to want to start with a nice clean slate here. So we'll go and talk to him. We get that initial dialogue. We're going to help. Get the journal entry. Now if we talk to him, have you found the generator yet? Have you found the generator yet? Okay, this time we get time is ticking, we really need that generator, are you close? So we can get either one of those responses now, every time we talk to him. As you create more flags, something that you're going to want to know about is this edit, find in files. This is really handy, especially when you start getting into very large dialogues. And especially when you have things like flags being set both in your story scripting and in your dialogues. For instance, if you want to find all the places where NPC Sven has met is used, we'll do this, and you'll see that it will tell us all the nodes where that flag is used. If we double click on it, I can bring this file over here a little bit. It will actually take you right to that node. So that's very handy when you're trying to debug problems with mismatches in the state of your dialogue with things that are happening in your scripts. You'll want to be very aware of that. And of course, you can also search by text, UUID, tags, and other locations. Okay, so our conversation is looking good. Let's do one more thing so that we can just show a little bit how dialogues and scripting, story scripting can tie in together. Let's change this text here. And we're going to have Sven offer an axe, just in case, you know, the character has to go bash a door down or something. Oops, it would help if I spelled this right. So we're going to add that. And we'll save our file. Now we'll move on over to the story editor in order to make that actually happen. We'll bring up the story editor. And we'll go back to the story that we created for the journal before. Now again, we're trying to keep things kind of light and simple here. If we were creating a standalone campaign that was going to get complex, we would probably organize some things differently. We might not put this in the journal. Maybe we have a story script for the quest rather than putting it in the journal. But for now, we're just going to put it in here. We'll just do a little bit of overview since we didn't address this very much before. There's a lot that could be said about story scripting. There are some really nice documents that are continuously in development at the Larian Wiki. I'm going to link to those. You'll definitely want to read those if you're going to get serious into making complex quests and campaigns, because you're going to have to do a bit of story scripting to make that happen. In any case, each one of these files here is called a story goal. Each goal will initialize, and then it will continue to run, and then when it is closed, it will complete. So this init section here for every story, it contains the actions that are executed when the goal initializes. Then in the KB section, or knowledge base, these are the rules that are going to become active as soon as the goal starts initializing. And then in the exit section here, these are the actions that are executed when a goal completes. And what happens is, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about the ordering, but when the game starts, it's going to run down and it's going to do the initialization section of each one of these stories in a certain descending order. And then your KB section will continue to function as the game goes on. So that's where we're going to add our new section of code. And what we're going to do is we're going to want to catch when that quest flag update got set. You remember that when we did the dialogue and we wanted to update the journal, we set a flag. Well, we can catch that flag here as well. And in order to avoid mistakes, what I would recommend is you actually go to a node where that flag is set, bring this up, put your highlight the name of the flag and do a Control-C. This will help you to avoid copy and paste errors because it has to be exact. So if object flag set, and if you look up here, it tells us something about the arguments. A lot of times, just the definitions up here give you a good indication of what it's expecting. In this case, for object flag set, whenever this flag is set for a speaker and a dialog instance we don't care about, then we're going to perform an action. So I'm not going to be the best person to explain Osiris syntax, but what's basically happening here is anytime this quest flag is set, this is going to pass into us who the speaker is. If we wanted to, we could put an actual value in there for a particular NPC, or if we created a player, let's say for instance you had an origin story character in your game, something like that, you could put the GUID here of the particular character so that you could catch a flag only when it is set on that character. But in this case, by just underbarring it and leaving it for Osiris to fill in, we're basically telling the story that we want this bit of code to execute anytime this flag is set, and we're just going to use this later on in our call for adding the axe to the player. And when we just stick an underbar here for the third value, it basically means we really don't care about it. We're not going to use it. We know that value is there, but it doesn't really matter for this case because we don't care what instance of the dialog this is. The dialog instance is something that increments every time the dialog fires. So you could do interesting things like, I only want this to happen the second time the player gets this dialog node. As you can imagine that there are certain times in a quest where you might want to do that. Okay, in any case, when this flag is set, what we want to do is we want to add an item to the character from a root template. We don't necessarily want to have to create this item in advance and put it in our level. We're basically just going to generate one from a root template. It doesn't exist yet. The game will basically spawn it and give it to the player when we create this call. Now, as for which one we want to do, down here in the root templates, I've already started filtering on weapons. And then I typed in axe human in the box just to filter it down, and you can see we have two different types of axes here. And if I click on one, we can see them in the preview window. And we're just going to take a more simple looking one. So this is the axe that we're going to want to give to the player. And we're going to need the GUID of this root template to pass into our story script. So we're just going to grab it from right here, copy type GUID name, GUID to clipboard, and we're going to paste that right into our story. Oops, I was jumping the gun here. First we want to get our call, and we'll just add the word template, or maybe item template. And if I hit Control V or Control Spacebar, we can see that we get a number of options here. Item template added to character is not an action, that's an event. So that's if you wanted to detect when an item template is added to a character, you could catch that event. This is the one that we actually want. This is the one that will add a new item from a template to a character. And so the first thing it's looking for is a string, and that's what I had just copied, that GUID string. However, it doesn't need this front part here, and as for which bits any one of these calls expects, it's not always clear. One thing that you can do, and this is very handy, I'm just going to do a Control C, and when I come up to here, I'm going to do a Control Shift F. What this does, this allows you to find any instance of this call within all the story scripts. So if you want to see how a particular call is used by Larian in their shared inventories, or you could bring up origins and you could see how they use it, you can start to get some ideas here as to how it's used. So this is the GUID and name of what we're going to give to the character. And let's call this, well, yeah, we can keep that speaker. So the first argument is the root template of the item we're going to give. The next one is the GUID string of the recipient. And in this case, we're going to take it from what's passed in here from the object flag set. So on whatever player was talking to NPC Sven and gets the axe, that's the GUID that's going to get passed into here. So that's the same person that we want to receive the axe. So we're going to put that in here. The next one, again, just says integer. That's where doing the Control-Shift-F and searching can help sometimes. Well, integer for what? What is it counting? If you look at it, just by looking at other examples, it appears to be how many that the player will receive. So this is all we should really need. It may seem a little overwhelming at first with the syntax if you've never done any of this before. After a few examples, you'll begin to pick it up and you'll find that a lot of these simple quests, you can do them pretty easily with just maybe one or two calls like this. Maybe a few of them depending upon how complex it is. And you'll start to get into a flow of it and it will start to make sense. So I'm going to save that and I'm going to build and reload. And we'll minimize that. Now I'm going to reload the level in story because that's the only way we're going to clear all our flags and be able to receive the quest again. And this time when I go talk to Sven, we'll accept the quest. And you could see up in the left-hand corner something was transferred over. We hit end. We got our journal update. And if we look in our inventory, here's our axe. We can equip it. Oh, I still had an axe from before when I was doing a test, because whenever you reload the level in the story in the editor, it doesn't clear out the player's inventory. So if we keep on doing this test, we're going to get multiple axes. Now, one final thing that we're going to want to go over here. Since we're starting to get into more scripting, something that you might find very valuable. Oops, that's a dialog. We don't want that. If we bring up our story editor, let's open story log. If you open this up, this is a log of all kinds of things that are going on in the story as your test is occurring. So for instance, let's say now that we were having some kind of problem and we wanted to find out what was happening when this flag got set. We could Control-C that. We could bring up the story editor and open up the story log. We could do a find on that. If we go down here, we'll actually find that when we did our db_quest_def state, you can see here, this is where that string concatenation is occurring and it's creating the flag. And then we can go down here and we can see that this is where the quest state was thrown and we got the event added to our journal. If we scroll down here all the way to the end, we'll see proc set quest NPC flag. We'll see that this is where it gets set. And look what happens here. We can see our item template add to call being executed. So for instance, maybe if we had erroneously added a GUID and we were getting an error or something, we might be able to come down here and find out some reasons why. So now that you're starting to add some of your own scripting to the story events, it's good to know about this log. When things are going awry, it can sometimes be insightful as to what the problems are. So now we have a quest, we have a weapon to help us with that quest. In the next tutorial, what we're probably going to do is we'll create a little building with some containers and a locked door where the generator is inside, and we'll afford the player a number of different ways to get in, whether it's either bashing the door down, locking, or using a lockpick to open the locked door, or perhaps using a master key that will open it. So we'll go over some of the ways that you can do that.